You're listening to Kitchen Table Finance. Join Dave Shotwell and Nick Nauta as they cut through the complexity of financial planning and serve bites of investment advice that are both personal and practical.
Hey Dave, how you doing today?
Not bad, Nick. How are you?
You know, this might shock you, but actually I'm pretty down. Snow towards the end of April always gets me down.
Well, as Billy Joe Shaver would say, if I hadn't seen your sunshine, I wouldn't know your rain, right? But that 80 degrees last week, 10 days ago now?
Yeah.
Maybe that was our summer. You just never know.
Oh, don't talk
Welcome
like
to
that.
Michigan.
Don't talk like that. Although I do think that in regards to your Billy Joe Shaver quote, I think we need to start keeping track of all of your quotes.
Well, I've probably used that one more than once. So that's what you're going to find out is that I only have a few of them. I just repeat them. And I probably misquote them differently every time. But yeah.
Anyways, podcast today, Dave. We got a interesting topic. We are going to talk about getting real about Social Security.
Yeah. This has been kind of an ongoing discussion with clients, particularly younger clients, for a while, but it seems to be becoming more prominent. There's more headlines around Social Security and its future. So yeah, time to get real, right?
Absolutely. And we have actually done a Social Security podcast in the past as well, but this is just a different take on it, kind of an updated version in regards to not necessarily what the strategies are, but more about the way people think about it, right or wrong,
right.
How to kind of address some of those things that are floating through the papers and the news media.
Yeah, with the main thing being all the headlines recently around funding of Social Security, which last year, with inflation being high, there was a huge cost of living adjustment to Social Security, but that then sped up all of the doomsday scenarios around when Social Security starts to run out of money.
Right. So we got one of the biggest, if not the biggest, cost of living adjustment to Social Security in January. So people were very happy to see that come through. But obviously the flip side of the coin is, Dave, if you start giving people more money, you're out of your bank account and it's not growing as fast as it used to. That has the opposite effect on how long this stuff will last. So
yeah. So the numbers will vary a little bit depending on what source you look at, but using an article that ran in the Wall Street Journal last week, which was titled "Fear Over Social Security Leads Some to Claim Retirement Benefits Early." If Congress does nothing, they would project a 23% cut to benefits as early as 2034.
So, the interesting thing about this is it's probably surprising for a lot of people, but maybe it shouldn't be. Social Security has been printing, kind of where the trust fund is at on your Social Security statement, literally the front page of it for quite some time. So it's just one of those things, kind of human nature is to forget about it until, kind of it becomes important to you. And Congress is even better at doing that, right? Governing by triage. Is that what you call it, Dave?
Crisis. Governing by crisis.
There you go.
That's what we do. Yes. And so, in response to this, and what the Wall Street Journal article we mentioned there a minute ago was really getting at is that a lot of people are starting their Social Security right away at 62, figuring if they go ahead and start Social Security, it's harder to mess with, right? That current Social Security beneficiaries won't have to worry about cuts.
Right. Yeah. So the fear is driving people to make a decision not necessarily based on the numbers or the strategies that might be most beneficial to you, more about, I got to get mine before it's gone, right?
Right. And we're not going to go too deep into Social Security strategies on this podcast. We've talked about it before. But in general, we end up a lot of time from a financial planning standpoint advising people to delay, right? Because their benefit goes up 8% a year every year from age 62 through age 70. And if you've got the means and you're concerned about longevity, spending more from your portfolio in your 60s to get a higher benefit makes sense for a lot of people. Not everyone, but for a lot of people. So really what we have here is a lot of people making a decision that they wouldn't normally make from a financial planning standpoint out of fear of what's going to happen.
Yeah. So, what's interesting to me about this decision, and we can talk a little bit about why people make decisions out of fear, but also, like, from the general standpoint, the more people that take Social Security earlier based on the way the system is set
Yes.
up, the better it is for the longevity of Social Security, right?
Right. Ironic, but true. Because then they're locking in what is likely going to be a lower Social Security benefit,
Right.
which takes a little of that. If everybody did that, it would probably it wouldn't solve the problem, but it would take some of the pressure off at a couple of years to when Social Security becomes a crisis.
And part of what's going on is, we're living longer in retirement. And so the longer you delay your payment, the bigger payment you get, which works out in your favor the longer you live. So if everybody's
Right.
living longer and everybody's, that kind of compounds in terms of the longer you wait, the more beneficial it may be towards you. And so,
Right.
so let's talk a little bit about kind of what's going on, what some of the funding scenarios might be, and how that might impact decision based on facts instead of fear.
Right. So right now, Social Security is funded by a 12.5% tax on payroll up to the first $160,200 of your earnings every year.
Mm-hmm.
So how what approaches could Congress eventually take to fix the problem? Obviously, they could increase that 12 point. We should preface this by saying that our expectation, and other authors that have written on this lately kind of echo this, is that actual cuts to benefits probably aren't likely.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they're off the table, but we would expect that workers will bear the brunt of changes to Social Security, not retirees.
Right.
More or less. So one thing that could happen, and that's likely to happen, is that 12.5% tax can go up, and it doesn't necessarily take a huge change to it to help shore up Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that $160,000 limit. So right now, if you make more than $160,000, say you make $200,000 a year, after you pass the $160,000 mark, you're not paying Social Security tax, but your benefit doesn't go up anymore either.
Right.
And so one solution that I've heard with some traction is to get rid of that limit so that all of you, if you're a high income earner making more than $160,000, all of your income would be taxed at 12.5%, but your benefit wouldn't go up still.
Right.
And that would be seen politically as a tax on wealthy people who
Mm-hmm.
can probably afford to pay it. And it, in the spectrum of things that politicians can do to fix Social Security, seems to be more palatable.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to what they do with Medicare, right?
Yeah. They don't want to call it means testing, but essentially, yeah, what Nick's getting at there is if you're paying for Medicare Part B, your premium on that is based on your income.
Right. Plus, so Medicare, if you're a high income earner, I think over 200,000, you have to actually pay a little bit.
Oh,
extra
yeah,
into
the surcharge. Yes,
the surcharge, right?
You're right. I was thinking on the back end in retirement, you were thinking, wow, they're working.
Well,
But yes,
both ways.
yeah, right. So those are some things that could be done. They also, full retirement age right now, I believe we're pretty much at 67 for everybody. It's been a sliding scale from 66 to 67, but we could see that get moved out to more accurately reflect um, to more accurately reflect longevity that we see now.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that when Social Security's age was originally set at 65, almost 90 some years ago now, it was the life expectancy was just a little bit less than that. So, so, life expectancy has gone way up while our full retirement age has only gone up slightly, and that's part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Is instead of being a protection against longevity and poverty for the select few who lived a long time in retirement, it has become an expected part of funding a long retirement.
Right.
So, um, also, the formula, I wouldn't, to me, it seems like that formula where it goes up 8% for delaying, that could be tweaked too. That wouldn't surprise me as much as benefit changes to existing beneficiaries. But, and you know how these things work. It's actually likely to be some combination of different things that ticks everybody off a little bit, right?
Right.
But,
Absolutely.
you
Well, and
know,
then they're going to wait until the last minute to do it when the solution's much easier
oh
right
yeah,
now.
no, and people will get all. There will be politicians making all kinds of hay around this and building elections around how they're going to fix the problem. And keep in mind the old cliche that Social Security is the third rail of American politics,
Mm-hmm.
and what that's referring to is the third rail on the subway line is the one that carries the electricity, right? If you
Right.
touch the third rail, you're going to get fried. And just think back to January, the State of the Union address, when the president brought up some of his opponents' thoughts on Social Security, it caused quite the uproar. Nobody in Congress, regardless of party, wants to be accused of messing with retirees' benefits.
Right.
And so it's going to be an interesting fight. But that's why I expect, well, I shouldn't say I expect, I hate to make it sound like a prediction, but the expectation is probably that workers will bear the brunt of this rather than retirees.
Mm-hmm. So, I think, as people are thinking about making this decision, one of the things too is that, the current thing right now is there would be in 2034, they're projecting if we do nothing, there'd be a 23% cut to benefits, right? And so that doesn't mean benefits are stopping. And so,
No,
kind of the fallacy of the argument of let's take early Social Security so I can get it while it's there is if you take Social Security early and we do actually get a benefits cut, they're going to base it on the benefit that you took, right?
right. Yeah. So if your base was bigger because you waited, I let's not pretend to think about how Congress would build that formula. But yeah, I see what you're saying. That if you're starting from a higher amount and they do a fixed percentage for everybody, it would be better
Right.
to have waited. Yeah. Yeah.
So that,
So
but I think it's just the bigger idea of making financial decisions based on facts and not emotions, right?
right, right.
So if you let your emotions kind of cloud your judgment, and I say this to people all the time, people make the worst financial decisions when there's the most
Mhm.
chaos going on in their lives, right? And so if you get all wrapped up in the politics of this, if you're losing sleep over what's going on with Social Security and how dysfunctional our, you know, Congress seems to be at
Mhm.
various times, you may potentially make a decision to take Social Security early based on what your emotions are, and that could potentially cause you harm in the long term
Right.
range of things.
Well, I've been thinking about this too. And, we deal with people day in and day out and the psychology around money and retirement. Drawing early is kind of people's default. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what feels best to most people.
Right.
Um, and usually when we're talking about delaying Social Security, although this has gotten better because there's a lot of media out there not the stuff talking about Social Security running out of benefits, but financial planning media has done a good job of explaining to people the benefits of delaying. So I'm seeing more, pre-retirees come in saying, "Hey, I know I should probably delay my benefit. Does that make sense for me?"
Right.
Whereas for years, the default has been, "Well, I can draw at 62, so I thought that's what I should do." Because it feels psychologically better to have that check in the mail from the government as opposed to drawing from my portfolio, even
Mm-hmm.
if, and so then we're running the numbers and coming up with, here's the counter argument for why you might want to delay based on longevity, based on your portfolio, yada, yada, yada. And to me, this just feels like one more thing that people are going to point to justify doing what they already want to do anyway. you
Oh
know,
yeah.
well, I'm gonna go ahead and draw at 62 because the government's gonna run out of money and not be able to print those checks if I wait, or they'll change the benefits, yada yada yada. And really, a lot of what they're saying is, I really would just feel better if I started drawing anyway. So here's another reason to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
So
think, I don't want this to sound like, hey, everybody should delay taking Social
no,
Security,
it's
because
not
there's
right for
really
everybody.
good
Yeah,
reasons to take it at 62 or 65. But I think it's more about making that decision and trying to take the emotions out of it. And
right.
one of the interesting things that I loved out of this article, and actually something that somebody does want a congressman, Senator Bill Cassidy, proposed changing the terminology, right? Because right
Yes,
now 62 is considered early
really.
eligibility age, and he wanted to change it to minimum benefit age.
Yes, he's been reading behavioral finance textbooks, I
Yeah,
think, because he would change 62 to minimum benefit age and 70 to maximum benefit age
right.
to remind people that they're going to get more if they wait and to frame
Yeah.
it differently. Yeah, I thought that was brilliant.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Whether
yeah.
or not it
Way to
happens, who
steal that.
knows? But
Well, yeah, but he's
just
right.
different way to think about it in terms
Yeah,
of, and
yeah,
sometimes in the public, that's a good thing in terms of how we frame that. So
yeah, yeah. So we'll see how this plays out. All you got to do is think back to the 2000 election with George Bush and Al Gore and the lockbox debate. This is nothing new. Al Gore was going to put Social Security in a lockbox. And we never did find out what that was going to mean. But, the bottom line is this has been going on for a while. It's nothing new. Um, and it will probably go right up to the brick before they fix it.
yeah, well, and just a great reminder, Dave, to be ready for this, because it's going to become a lot more front and center as we get into
Right.
election
Yeah.
season, and so
Yeah. Be
prepare
psychologically
yourself.
ready for it. Yeah.
Right,
Don't
exactly.
panic. Just remember, most politicians, the thing they're weakest at is economics. And, they don't have to take an economics test before they run for office. So,
Yeah,
or a logic test. but
yeah.
but anyway, that's we won't go any further with that. Um,
There you go. Well, this has been great, Dave. I think
yeah.
if our listeners have questions on Social Security or Social Security claiming strategies, they can email us at
Yep.
info@srbadvisors.com.
We should link to that old podcast too, where we talked about strategies.
Yes, we will throw that in the show notes. If you haven't heard that one, feel free to go back and check it out. Until next time, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
This is a Zedia Media production.